Well, we would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play on these lands. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm so glad we have a full house. Good work, everyone. My name is Jennifer, and I am from the City of Vancouver, and we are excited to have you be a part of the Women Deliver Satellite Sessions. It is a special 4-day event focused on gender equity, and it's filled with thought-provoking discussions, workshops, and more, hosted by the City of Vancouver, and put on with generous support for the Vancouver Public Library. One housekeeping note, the washrooms are down the hall and to the left, so you need to go there. And then after the session, we invite you to visit an exhibition on the 8th floor titled Women Deliver Cities. It's an art display, and it documents the work of 24 local women artists for whom the built environment is their subject matter and their field of action. So if you have some time, feel free to check it out. Right now, I would like to introduce you, I have the honor of introducing you to the CEO of viaSport, Charlene Krepakavich, who will introduce the panel. So one more introduction and then off you go. All right, thank you so much.
All right, can everybody hear me okay back there? Terrific. Well, I'm Charlene Krepakavich, and I'm the CEO of viaSport. I'm thrilled to be here. As you know, this week is a very special week in Vancouver as the world comes together around gender equity. And today we're here to dive into that subject matter with this wonderful panel and to talk about equity in physical activity and sport. Since starting at viaSport, I've been inspired by our work to understand and promote physical activity and sport in girls and women. Through our own research, through programming and grants, we have promoted the importance of female participation in sport and physical activity. For me, like many of you, physical activity has influenced my life. It has led to great opportunities to lead, like this wonderful organization. It has influenced my career, and it has also engendered a real discipline around health and well-being that I live and breathe by. And so I strongly believe in the role of women and girls in sports and participation, and I'm really excited about the panelists here today. So I look forward to learning more about this topic from this wonderful panel, and leading us through this conversation this afternoon is our very own Vice President of Sport and Development and Olympian freestyle skier, Jennifer Heil, and she's been a real leader and advocate for girls and women in participation in sport, and I'm sure you'll be inspired by her this afternoon. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm short and I can't see everyone, so hopefully you can see me. We'll try and project all the way to the back of the room. Can you hear us okay back there? Yeah, it's a very long room. First of all, thank you so much for being here with us today. I can safely say it's all of our passion up here to engage on this topic of how do we create a safe and welcoming place for girls and those that identify as female in sport and physical activity. And the reality is that we're not there yet. We have incredible narratives that have remained stuck as to whether or not girls should engage. So there's the narratives around hyper sexualization of females, but also hyper masculinity of males also plays a role into these narratives that perpetuate themselves and why girls aren't accessing this space. And so in celebration and in part with Women Deliver, the topic of Women Deliver going on in our city, hosting 8,000 people from around the world on the topic of gender equity, is how can we all use our power to make change? And every single one of us in this room has power. We have power through different means, individual power through our networks, and so really want to explore how we collectively can help change this narrative and help create safe spaces for girls and women in sport. In just a minute, I'll give you a brief introduction of our amazing panelists, a powerhouse of women up here who not only are daily working in this space, but do so in such a passionate way, in such a pure way, and really have been at it, many of these women advocating for the rights of girls and women, and again, those that identify as female for this space. And so just want to acknowledge all the work that's been done. I'm looking, at you, Bryna, and also Emma, who's been at this a long time. And I think we have an amazing opportunity. The narratives are starting to shift. We are engaging in larger conversations. I'm always so excited to see both women and men in the room on this topic. And so there's great opportunity ahead, but still some really real challenges. So super briefly, the question is, how do we get to a new normal, and why does sport and physical activity even matter? There's so many things that can support the development and leadership of girls, and so why sport and physical activity? Well, we know 94% of girls that engage in a formal sport experience have gone on to sit in C-suite positions in business. We know girls who are physically active, whether that's through sport or other means, have higher grades, they have increased salaries, they have larger social networks, improved self-confidence and self-efficacy. And we also know that around 8 years old, girls start to step back. They start to lose confidence in their own ability to move, the agency over their own bodies compared to boys. And that's before there's any real physical differences that set in. So a lot of this has to do with our narrative and how we approach this subject, which is all within our power to change. Okay, I don't want to talk anymore because we've got a full lineup here, and let me now introduce these amazing women up here, and just let me figure out which order I'm going to do that in. Okay, so Bryna. Bryna Koplow is a member of JW Sporta, right over there. Oh, you've got your picture, so we know who you are, Bryna. And works at the intersection of health, physical activity, sport education, and sport and education. She's been responsible for the initial development and implementation of Action Schools BC and Premier Sports Award. She's an incredible advocate for gender equity and physical activity, sport, and recreation, and sits on multiple expert panels, working groups, and boards, including a founder of Promotion Plus. So thank you, Bryna. We've got Emma. So Emma's the founder and director of Red Fox Healthy Living Society. It's a charity that fosters physical literacy and leadership development in children and youth who face barriers, with a focus on Indigenous, new immigrant, and differently able children and youth. Red Fox now has over 30 programs in 7 municipalities, reaching 1,000 children and youth each month. Congratulations. Emma's background is through women's studies at the Simon Fraser University, and has almost 30 years of experience in social justice and capacity building work. Thank you for just to the left of me, we've got Jennifer. Jennifer has a bachelor in kinesiology, a master's in coaching, and is an NCCP Level 3 athletics coach. She is the most humble multitasker I've ever met. She's got about 6 jobs right now, because she's so, not actually 6, but she's so passionate about this space. She's involved in many different initiatives. One is with viaSport and developing a multi-sectoral physical literacy program called MOVE. She also did work in Botswana with the National Olympic Committee, developing athlete pathways and supporting team management. Has been nominated for International Sport Development Award, as well as Cause Most Influential Woman in Sport Award. We have Poonam Sandhu joining us today. She's the head coach of the UBC Thunderbirds women's field hockey team. She's an accomplished athlete herself, representing Team Canada in international competitions and taking the Thunderbirds to 5 consecutive national titles as an athlete. And her trajectory is really incredible. We'll learn more about it, but basically went from athlete to head coach. And it's truly remarkable, and we look forward to learning more. And last but not least, we have Steph Corker. She's the founder of the Corker Co., starting the company after spending the last 12 years recruiting across several sectors. She's on the board for the nonprofit One Girl Can, a professional Ironman athlete. We'll have to talk about the name, I guess, in this session, the Ironman athlete. and loves to add a little aloha everywhere she goes. And I know I'm really excited to hear more about your business and leadership development and how that you bring that lens to sport as well. So thank you, everyone. Okay, so as you can see, we have a full lineup, so we're going to keep it moving. Poonam, I'm going to start with you. You've been a player, now a coach. Can you please share with us why you think it's important to consciously build a positive environment for all of your players? Because you've spoken in the past around how you really focus on the empowerment of your players.
Yeah, so with my playing experiences, I've, had various different types of coaches, different types of administrators that I've worked with in the past, and I always found that one thing that was always missing was just that personability or that personal touch with different teams or different environments. And I really felt in the environments where that was sort of emphasized, we were successful, and we were very successful. And in the moments where we didn't have that personal touch, or there wasn't sort of that environment or that culture that was built and didn't create a safe environment for others to really feel comfortable to share with one another, that's when we really were struggling. And I think as a player it was very obvious to me, and so coming into the coach role, that was the first thing that I wanted to try and build, was just a really safe culture for everyone to feel like making mistakes is normal, to not feel like you have to second guess your decisions, and I think that's something that has really allowed us to grow as individuals, and even for the younger athletes coming in, because I feel like just in general, any sector that you go into, your work, your school, your sports, you're always trying to put your best foot forward, but we're human, and I think that's one thing that I've just really tried to build, is that mistakes are inevitable. It's just how we're going to learn from that and then keep moving forward. So hopefully with that message, it creates a safer environment for everybody to develop together.
And how do you share that message?
If a mistake is made, I think identifying it right away, as opposed to letting it linger and then maybe talking about it a week later or a couple of days later, identifying the mistake right away, finding the solution, and then just continuing to move forward. Yeah. That has always been really successful in my experience, and even as a player, responding to coaches in that way made me feel more comfortable in my own development, and so I'm just trying to pass that message on and trying to empower the girls to understand that, hey, if you make a mistake, own it. Yeah. It's totally fine to make mistakes. It's something that we do every single day. Yeah. Own it and then continue to move forward.
Thank you. Emma, over to you. So as founder and CEO of Red Fox, I'm wondering, when you started on this pathway, what's the gap that you recognized was present in the current community programming? And why specifically did you choose physical literacy as a way to support these youth?
Okay, so with the opportunity to start Red Fox came because the Olympics were coming to Vancouver. And I've been working in community programming in the inner city for quite a long time. And I saw that the opportunity to be physically active is so important for mental health and feeling powerful. And to do that, you really need to provide spaces where children and youth, women and girls are at. So, sport is great, and at the same time, physical activity that's accessible at your local community center, at your school, that's free. It's for all members of the family. Red Fox is set up to be as inclusive as possible for as many different women and girls, as well as young men and boys, so that they can feel that sense of empowerment. Social justice is my passion, and I really believe that being physically active is a right, and being able to feel powerful in your body translates into every aspect of your life.
Thank you. You just have to sit with that one. I had to absorb that one. Yeah, it's I couldn't agree more on that sense of agency that you get through movement and confidence in your body. Jennifer, I'm wondering, so you have a few hats, but a lot of your effort right now is work at the systems level and capacity building and building programs. So why are you working here? Why are you putting so much effort at the systems level in creating those pathways and programs for youth?
Yeah, so I guess at the systems level, that's where we see the change really happening. So it's how a lot of the change, if we want to advocate for girls and women in sport, comes from that organizational structure as well. So providing opportunities not only for the girls to play, but a space to grow. So oftentimes what happens if we have co-ed programs only, sometimes the boys end up overshadowing the girls in the time that they're playing. So either because, at a young age, we encourage them to get in sport earlier, so they develop those skills earlier, they have more confidence because we teach them to have confidence in society. But even sometimes boys tend to play a little more aggressively and girls a little more strategic, but it comes out a little passive at first, so the boys kind of take over. So at the systems level, encouraging not only the organization, but the leaders as well to notice that and to provide spaces for them to grow. So one way of doing that is creating girls-only programs where they can really excel and shine and try those new skills. So recently we've done some girls-only programs at schools because they're lacking motivation and confidence to join the programs, and it was amazing to see the girls really shine and take that opportunity to try new skills and grow. And we had a gym of 50 plus girls all participating and happy playing sports. And then co-ed programs obviously are beneficial as well, but it's recognizing that within those programs, giving them a space to grow. So whether that's giving them like leadership tasks or specific tasks on the team so that they practice that skill instead of always someone else like a boy taking over or anything. And we see that at all levels too, of like any ages that, if you're in a meeting or coach education, sometimes girls are or females are a little more hesitant to step up and speak or ask questions. And it's not always that they don't have anything to say, it's that they don't have the opportunity to speak. So it's working with organizations to build those programs and as well as building capacity within the leaders so that they can recognize these things.
Yeah, we started this conversation really around how the narratives are getting in the way and gender stereotypes, that's part of it. But the other part is that you have to create an environment that can receive the girls and make it one of their own. So yeah, it's awesome to hear how you're tackling that. Bryna, your career you've intensely focused on driving change at both the individual and system level. So why do you think there is so much more work required to build a more effective support, I guess, for participants? So the question being, why do we have to work so hard at this challenge to get girls to access what is their right, physical activity, and if they choose to participate in sport?
It's like a rhetorical. I don't know why it's so hard, but it is hard. And I think what happens is even though we see some incredible advances that we've made, I think, in all different levels, you can look on the fields and you can see all sorts of girls playing, and so then I think it becomes then more difficult even to talk about our work and realize how much work there still is to do because it's a little bit more hidden now. And I think that does make it a little bit more difficult for us because so many advances have been made. But there's still so many girls and women that are not participating, that don't feel comfortable in that space. It used to just break my heart when people would say, well, my daughter, she's not really that athletic. And I would think, like, I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that, to me, it means they haven't found something that lights them up. To me, it means, have they only done 2 sports and haven't been good at either? Like, there is a whole realm of opportunities that are out there, and I think we need to focus on that, focus on making sure no girls get left behind, no women get left behind, that there is an entry point for them at any level to participate, and there needs to be strategies around what that looks like. And often those that have really high skill competency or are very comfortable in that milieu may not be the ones to realize what it is that makes so many others uncomfortable or not willing to step in. And none of this is rocket science, and we can probably get into all sorts of those things, but it is really peeling it back to the bare basics and trying to make sense of what would make an open, inclusive, safe environment for girls and women.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the invisible nature of the barriers, I think what you're talking to is it makes it so complex. But you're right, we have the ingredients, so now it's about figuring out how to put them together. Okay, Steph.
Before you ask your question, can I
Yeah.
jump on this one?
Absolutely.
Because I think, I mean, I don't know all sport, and undeniably I'm obsessed with the sport of triathlon, and I might know more about the running space than really much else. But my brother constantly reminds me, nobody knows who the second female Boston Marathon finisher was. They only know of the first woman that got yanked off course when they found out that she was a woman disguised as a male because she wanted to race too. And I think the storyline goes that media hasn't covered females, and they have really focused attention on, be it the sexualization of women, or if you didn't look a certain way, then they just would choose not to cover female sport. And I think money is another legit factor. And when across the board women are paid less, they will invest less of their income into sport. And sport generally is expensive in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be. Equality would be wonderful, accessibility would be great, but it's not the reality right now. And so when you sexualize women in a certain way in sport, and they don't have role models that say, way to go for getting out there, you have to look a certain way before we'll celebrate you. And men are so far ahead of the conversation. And I just think those are two really big things that we can't shy away from being in a real conversation about, be it business or sport. And until those things change, which really means until more women are at the top to stand for women, then it's a conversation that we're in.
Yeah, you're right. It's like this continuous feedback, and we are seeing really strong role models, Canadian role models, American role models in terms of Haley Wickenheiser was just speaking out that women have to speak about the change they want to see. And I was just on a part of a panel discussion this morning, speaking with women who've invested a lot of money into gender equity, and they're saying, like, time's up. We have to do this together in a way that is good, because gender equality is good for everyone, and we have to make it inclusive in how we do it, but we also have to come at this in a way where we're not asking for change anymore. We know what's required, and it's time to put those things in place. So thank you for that. Quick question back to you, Steph. You're involved a lot in terms of the leadership of Ironman organization and looking to change the representation of female leaders at that level. Can you speak to why you're tackling that and seeking a new normal?
Yeah, I'm totally failing at it right now, but that's okay. Until they kick me out of the race, I'm still going to toe the line. And the reason is that the sport of Ironman, which is a long-distance triathlon, is predominantly men. And the leaders at the top of the organization are men, and it's a for-profit organization, and people pay a lot of money to race the Ironman distance, and specifically. And the argument I'm fighting, which I actually believe is prevalent across more than just Ironman, and the reason I'm tackling only Ironman is because A, it's something I'm super passionate about, and I think that if we can attack where our passion lies, it will spread. And if we try to go after the ocean, who knows what we'll catch, but I feel like I'm really swimming in like a lake in our backyard and not the ocean by any means. But the sport of Ironman is currently about 70 or 75% male and 25% female at the world championship level. And my fight is for 50-50. And they're like, well, we'll give you 2% more. I'm like, it's not good enough. Like, I want 50-50. And they believe in proportional representation, and I believe in gender equality. And I'm not doing a very good job at listening or at hearing their side. And I just think it's called equality, and you give us equal spots on the start line. And the men at the top just think that women deserve 25% of that race. And I just can't hear it, but that's why I fight the fight.
Never give up.
Yeah, haven't yet.
So I just want to come back to the complexity of this issue for a second. And I think one of the things that we're just starting to do is recognize that girls are not one monolithic group. And we've been approaching this as, how do we create safe spaces for girls? But I think there's now a lot of movement towards this idea of intersectionality, and we all have a lot of identities that intersect and come to the table. And so it's challenging because a positive sport or physical activity experience means so many different things for all of those that we call, girls and women. So Emma, I was wondering if you could give us a tangible example in ways that you've been able to tailor the experience to youth with different backgrounds, different levels of physical literacy coming into your program.
Absolutely. So in Red Fox, we focus on active play. So we do have some casual sports. What we do is we go to schools and community centers, local parks, and we have youth role models from the communities we serve that are there, that are trained. It's their job training. And the children are able to try out still walking, the circus arts, some of the old-fashioned toys like pogo sticks, hula hoops, skipping. And so what that does is there's so much power in being able to choose what you want to do and try something, find it challenging and scary even, but to be led step by step on how to do something and then master it. So one story is early on in Red Fox, we have stilts that are the ones that you hold on to, and they start off really low to the ground, and then we have all these different levels that go up. There's one girl who was 9 years old, young Indigenous girl, very shy, but she mastered the stilt walking in no time. And she was walking around her schoolyard on the tallest stilts, taller than her principal. And it's things like that, especially for girls that maybe don't do really well academically, or if you're new to Canada and English is a new language, you don't need language to play. And if you have that choice of group activities as well as individualized activities, children are so scheduled and watched over. And Red Fox is kind of based on the 70s, which I remember. And where, you could just go outside and play all day. Well, we can't do that nowadays. Some of the activities that parents could get away with in the 70s, social services would be called on them in this time period. But we can try and recreate some of that spirit. And I'm going to share one quick story about why Red Fox is the way it is. The Sea Festival was a festival in Vancouver, and they had a children's parade, and anybody could come and be in the parade. So I thought, great, I was stilt walking when I was a child. I thought, I'll be a hobo clown on stilts. So I got some of my old suit of my dad's, stuffed it with a pillow, put makeup on my face, and went down, and I was in this parade. And I won a prize. It was so hot out, I forgot that, oh right, maybe I shouldn't have a pillow and a wool suit on in summertime. And I had to get off every few steps, wipe my hands, because it was metal stilts. And then the mayor was there, and he was shaking my hand. Well done, young lad. And I said, I'm a girl. Well done, young lad. It was Mayor Jack Bullrich. And it was beyond his comprehension that it could be a girl that had the gumption to do that. So that stuck in my mind, and that's one of the motivations, because I wanted girls to have, like boys as well, but especially girls to have that experience of being powerful, of being a master in something in front of their peers.
I wish you grew up around the corner from me, and we could have had some fun. Walking on stilts. That's awesome. Poonam, over to you. So just around around how we balance the needs of different people. How do you do that in a team environment where you have to create a cohesive team, which is made up of individuals? And I've seen some very negative practices in the past that have really sidelined individuals for the benefit of the team. So yeah, wondering how you approach that.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, especially when you have probably upwards to 25 young females in a room trying to get to one solution, and there's just a bunch of different opinions. So yeah, as you can tell, it can probably be difficult regardless of gender. But I think what's been really big for us and what's been really good for our program has been that we set a culture early on. And within that culture, we really emphasize teamwork, but we also emphasize, your opinion, and making sure that, regardless of where you're coming from, we're valuing your opinion. So personally, I've sort of said to all the girls that all of you bring a different experience. You all come from different backgrounds, and so share those experiences with us, because there might be a situation, whether it be on the field or off the field or whatever it may be, where I might not have the solution, and you've had an experience and you might know, a better solution for that. So share that with everybody. And so we really try to emphasize this culture of acceptance and of, safe environment for people to share, And with that, I think it just builds a stronger team ethic, teamwork. And, you know, it's funny how things like this on the field, like within sport, can really translate into, you know, daily tasks. You know, even just this year, we recognize that we're not getting, you know, the alumni support that some of the other teams are getting. We're not receiving as much money year in. We're not, you know, we don't have as much buzz around our team. Our sport is dwindling. We're losing participation. What's going on? You know, and so I think one of the things that we really tried to tackle was just to sort of elevate or engage the community. And how do we do that? And so we all came together. This wasn't, you know, one person's idea. This was everybody's collective idea. And I think just brainstorming, that was something that we were used to doing on the field all the time, you know, coming to a solution really quickly, coming together and figuring that out. And so we did that outside as well. And it's just, you know, it's nice how you can really see how skills on within sport can translate into your life.
That's my next question. You answered like 3 of my questions
Oh,
there.
okay.
No, but around, I think you know all of our questions. No, about resources and the transferability of skills. And what I'm hearing too is that it takes the humility of the leader and the tone that you set as well to say, like, let's come at this collectively and open that up. So that's amazing. Bryna, over to you. Where am I? Here I am. What have you found? I mean, you've developed programs, you've been on the ground, you've been at the system level. What have you found is the best way to build a girl's confidence to engage in physical activity or sport?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about and we appreciate that there isn't a one-size-fits-all model, and I think that's okay. But I think I think that's important, and we need to understand that. But I think some of the guiding principles that we need to stand true to is, for girls, the social connected piece is often overlooked and not deemed as important as I think it may be. You know, we often focus on, you know, the physical element. Is there an injury involved? And the energetic element, is there some kind of eating or health issue involved? But the social and the emotional element is really what's important, I think, for females to be involved, and I think we need to appreciate that and understand that, and realize that, you know, sort of playing on some of the things that have been said already. Every girl has a story, and you have to care enough to wonder what that story is, what their experiences are, what will provide meaning to them in this experience that or opportunity you're providing to them. And so that takes asking and caring and actually really wanting to know what it is that leads them to either being involved or not being involved or just starting to be involved. So I think those are some of the, you know, pieces that need to be in place. I mean, Sport England writes about, you know, in their report they talk about, and my favorite part of it, I'm sure their report was long and filled with all sorts of great things, but my favorite part of it is, you know, when they talk about go where the women are, go where the girls and women are, start trying to change them to suit your programs. And that kind of premise and that kind of principle, a principle of respect and understanding, I think bodes well for any program that's going to be designed, because you need to ask for their input and hear what they're saying and what they're looking for, and often that piece is overlooked.
Jen, similar question to you that we just asked Bryna. You're building programs to support the capacity development of leaders. So what would you say to a leader that's essential to support more girls in sport or physical activity?
I'd say similar to, like as I spoke about before, the providing space for them to grow, but I think even recognizing the environment, and as we're speaking, that girls are all different in their characteristics and personality, their story, and providing space for all of that. Oftentimes when we hear that someone's in sport and they're female, we associate them with a tomboy. And then sometimes girls have this perception that in order to play sport, they need to be more masculine. However, if someone plays sport, they could just be a sporty female, and that's okay too. So allowing them that if they are more feminine to play, and we've done conversation with girls of, you know, asking them why they don't participate in sport, and some of them say that it's because they think it's not cool, because it's more of a boy thing to do, but allowing them to participate in that. And then also changing it to allow for their interest as well, of asking them, as you said, to like see what it is that they're interested in playing. So sometimes we find that at the ground level, like at grassroots level, because we're thinking of boys in sport, we sometimes play games that are suited to like things that they might be more interested, like I don't know, like Star Wars or that sort of thing, or Pirates. And I was playing a game with kids one day at camp, and there was we were playing a game of Mario, so also, I guess it could go both ways, but basically there's different stations where they had to do a skill at each one and then get to Bowser's Castle. And there was only 2 girls in the camp, and they came up to me and they said, they were like, oh, we have an idea, what if we just stay in the castle and we'll be the princesses and then the boys can come save us? And I was like, no, you do not need a boy to save you. But you can be princesses, so we'll go with that idea. It'll go with your interest. But if you're going to be a princess, then you have to be in the castle and protect your kingdom. They have to like tag the boys or something. And if the boy comes in to join your team, then you have to manage that team and be the leader and lead the strategy. So it's playing off what their interests are, but then also providing that space for them to build a confidence and empower them to try their skills.
Before I get to like the big question that we've all been waiting for, how are we going to solve this problem? I want to just ask you a question, Steph, around leadership. So your business is around building leaders, training and development. Can you maybe share with us that some of the skills that you've seen develop through physical activity and sport, and how those are transferable into other places like the job market?
Yeah. I would say that I, as an athlete, I might have a bias toward athletes. And what I've done to try to work with that bias is take away the sport and just say that the reality is that there's something I'm very passionate about, and looking for what the passion is in other people and how do you foster that passion. I think I'm going to answer your question. I'm just going to riff
any way you
a bit
want.
of a corner. That part of why I started this business was because I didn't know of a female leader in Vancouver that I wanted to work for. And I said, if there isn't a female leader that is running an organization that I want to join, I'm going to start one. And I believe in the end, I want to be able to race professionally and run a business and have a career. And companies that would say, like, you can't, which I understand for their good reasons, wasn't going to be the place for me. So then I said, what are all of the things I need to create inside of this organization? And this comes full circle. You know, that I want more women on the boardroom table. I want more women in roles, just like I want more women on the start line. And I couldn't pick or choose. I couldn't only fight one battle and then just go to a job every day that I didn't really love to fight an Ironman equity conversation. And we support, I'm on the board of One Girl Can, and we support education for women in Africa, and we have an online education program called the Manager Start Line. And if you are a female-founded company or a gender-balanced leadership team, we give you 30% off the training program, because you still get 30% off every female salary that you hire. And I witnessed this firsthand with everyone who we recruit for and place. And I just think leadership is being in these conversations. And I love that there are so many women here. I love that there are men here. The reality is that I want a group of men to be having these conversations. If a room was full of men saying, I'm paid 30% less, what would that dialogue be? And, you know, I think that the and of how do men talk about more men and boys being involved in sport should be the same place we're in. And I love women a lot. I'm a raging feminist, and I want us to speak to men about these problems.
I mean, I don't want to summarize too much, but I mean, I think you answered your own question as to what sport has given you, and those tools, and how you see the world, and that sense of agency, you know, to build the environment you want. It's really, really amazing.
Well, one interesting story. I've been racing Ironman for 10 years, and when I started, there wasn't a female tri-suit. I had to wear a men's tri-suit, and that wasn't that long ago. I mean, I wasn't in the 70s doing this. I was like 10 years ago. There wasn't an outfit for a female to do the sport, and I remember feeling like this sausage, and I'm like, why is there nothing flattering for a woman? And it's come so far, but I'm like, those are real conversations. If we don't feel great, we don't want to keep doing it.
I actually went to my first Olympics in a men's suit. The that I rolled over and had a belt sticking up to here, and same issue. I didn't receive a woman's outfit until 2006.
Oh my gosh.
And actually, even our clothing sponsor didn't provide women's
Apparel.
like shirts in
Yes.
the 2002 games. So we have come a long ways, right? And yeah, also the money's driving that because they realize that women do want to participate in sport and physical activity. Now there is a marketplace that's growing. Okay, so here's as we look to kind of close this out in the next 15 minutes, the big question: how are we going to achieve gender equity in sport and physical activity? Now I'm going to start with you, and if you want to take us another direction, totally fine. But I was really interested in what stereotypes that we need to tackle at university level sport, whether that's at an individual or a team or an organizational level. What's going to be required to move things forward?
So I think I'll try and tackle a couple of things there, but and I'll get back to the university side of it. But I think in terms of how we can really sort of foster some change, and this is at all levels, grassroots, university, international, whatever it may be. I'm just going to revert back to some of my own experiences. But when I was 9, I wanted to start playing this sport. My dad played field hockey, played for the national team. So I really wanted to play my family sport. And I wanted to play for my dad's team, but unfortunately they didn't have a girls' team. And so he was going to put me with a different club, and I said, no, why can't I play for the same colors that you play for? And he said, well, they don't have a girls' team. And he being 9, stubborn, very stubborn. I said, well, then get some girls. Like, I don't see the problem here. So I think that like sort of clicked in my dad's brain, being like, oh yeah, why don't we just get some girls? So all of his friends, all of the guys that he's grown up playing with, they all got their daughters, and we created our first team for their club, and that was in 2000. And since then, we've had girls teams, and we have a club which has girls teams in each division, each age category, from under 5s all the way to the women's program. And I just kind of look back at that, and I'm like, wow, if that decision wasn't made, would this have been here? And would have all these girls that have come across, girls from immigrant backgrounds, that don't speak the language here, and they're just trying to fit in, and would they have a space? And so when I look at that, it's a small decision, that a local community member made. We're not very, we don't have a lot of money and stuff like that, and we don't live, have a lot of connections, but we just made a small little decision, and it's had a great trickle effect. And since then, we've had girls go on, play in the NCAA, play at university level. We've had a couple of girls play at the national level. And so when you see how this domino effect plays and how big of an impact it can make, I think that's where it needs to start, is just right at the grassroots level. And so I guess for the question of, these stereotypes at the university level, it's honestly, it's an identity that if you have it when you're young, it's really hard to break when you get to the top level. Being a tomboy, trying to fit into that stereotype and be that person, but if you're not that person, truly, you're never going to be able to fit that mold. Even when you're a player, trying to play like X person, but you're actually B player, you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be satisfied with yourself. So I think having that conversation with everybody once they do get to university level, saying, hey, we value what you bring, we value your experiences, and we value your thoughts and opinions, and just go out there and do the best that you can, regardless if you're a tomboy, or if you're a girly girl who would like to wear pink in your hair, who cares? Just go out there, have fun, and do the best that you can. And I think that's a good message to send, and hopefully it has a trickle effect.
Yeah, that where we started this conversation around how we all have power. I mean, that was so amazingly demonstrated as a 9-year-old, the power that you had by having that conversation.
Naive and stubborn.
Well,
and not knowing, right?
No,
but
actually knowing, I would say, that you actually stood in your own light and you did know, and you had that ability to have that conversation, and how much we can affect change by having conversations with those around us and our family and friends. So, Emma, over to you. in terms of how we're going to achieve gender equity in sport and physical activity, really see you as a leader and a trailblazer in your sector. Can you maybe share with us around how you've learned to exert your leadership and grow your organization into what it is today, some of the lessons you've learned along the way to get here?
Absolutely. So I started a charity, and it was based on a model that I knew worked, and I stuck to that model. So different funders, different partners have pressure to change the model, to get rid perhaps of the employment training aspect with the youth leaders, or to have it be more instruction-based rather than being active. And because, I'm the founder in the ED, I have that control and I have that power, and I can exert that influence. And I just want to say a little bit about what we can do as individuals. I want to give my hats off to Cindy Crapper, sitting there from the Vancouver Park Board. Yes, it's indeed you. The Vancouver Park Board has done amazing things with leisure access, and it was a real struggle. So community members, myself included, folks from UBC, Vancouver Coastal Health came together and lobbied hard with Cindy to make changes to leisure access. So as individuals, there are things that you can do, and one of that is if, no matter your municipality, a lot of community centers have associations. Join your association and be really clear that the spaces that are taxpayer funded be open to community groups that provide free programs. This is so important because so many spaces in schools and community centers are rented out because school boards are strapped for cash, or people think, well, let's make money out of this. Those are community resources. People and girls and women on low incomes, they need those spaces. Transportation is a real issue. You need to provide it where it's at. We also really need to re-examine what is safety. So for women and girls, unfortunately, the most unsafe people in their lives are often people that they know. Stranger danger is overblown. Let your daughters go out for long bike rides, let them on the trails, teach them how to be safe. Being strong in your body makes you strong in your mind, and it makes you more assertive. So allowing girls and women to be active in sports increases their safety. And community fitness spaces need to be safe as well. And I'll give you one example. You've heard of Ungap the Map, the idea that all cycling routes should be safe and accessible, and there shouldn't be these gaps. Like, you go to the Patella Bridge, you cycle on that, it's scary as heck, I do it. We need to think about physical recreation spaces like trails from a safety lens. The Central Valley Bikeway, beautiful bikeway. The Vancouver section of it is amazing. It's safe, it's well lit, there aren't these hidden spaces. When it goes through Burnaby Lake Regional Park, it switches to rocks. So I have an electric bike and I feel safe there, but when I didn't have an electric bike, I would avoid that because it's in the forest, there's no lights, and it's gravel. You cannot travel fast on a bike on gravel. I would never walk there. I would never run there because it's not safe. So talk to your city councils, talk to your park board commissioners about the importance of safety for space.
Can I just emphasize something on that? So I work for the City of Vancouver with Cindy, and I just want to say, thank you. Because that collaborative voice with your city council and the people who are giving access, I've worked there for 5 years, and I've never necessarily been denied when I brought them an idea, an opportunity to access sport in our community. However, every budget, there's 45 arts and culture people lined up to speak and praise City Council for what they do, and we have over $60 million in grants for arts and culture. We have very, very little in sport, and I think it's just because we don't have that voice at the table, where it's we come together, we come when someone's taking something away from us, but we haven't come to pitch what we want. And I haven't seen that denial yet, and I guess that's where I'm just asking, I'm really inspired by this, and I hear all of these stories happening all over the place, and I want to find that collaborative voice, because we haven't been denied necessarily from City Council, we just haven't asked. And so that's where I'm just trying to figure out what that next step is, to be able to create opportunities like this. We came forward for a new Women in Sport grant program because Women Deliver was on for $25,000, and tonight at Arts and Culture Night, we're awarding 5 grants of $5,000 to grassroots community champions who are out there doing some amazing things in our community, and I had no idea they were out there. But now we're awarding it tonight, and it's for people the story's not told, and that opportunity to see it. And we're just wanting to get into that storytelling because once council sees it, they approve it. So I'm just trying to figure out what's that voice and how do we show up at budget to say thank you, because arts and culture are so collaborative. The Creative BC strategy with government out there is a ton of money. It's not really there in the sport recreation side of things, so I just want to encourage that.
Thank you, Joe. Probably a good time to open it up to questions. Does anyone want to comment on just alignment and collaboration, or we do that?
How we can empower a man for leader support to a woman leader?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
How can we empower a man for leader support to a woman leader?
Yeah. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Because it's part of life.
I mean, I can start while you're thinking. About how you want to tackle it. I mean, I think for me, it's about education. So they may not know what the issues are, and they need to be educated. And I don't mean that in a negative connotation. I think we need to have our voice, and we need to speak about what it is that women need in order for girls and women to be physically active. You know, whether it is talking about the way things are marketed, you can't be what you can't see, when it's about graphics, when it's about design, when it's about facilities, when it's about uniforms, when it's about equipment, when it's about, I mean, women leaders, same age leaders, same skill quality, like all those things. We can't expect anyone to know our story until we tell our story ourselves, share our story with the men that want to make a difference for the women in the girls and women in their lives. But I think we need to be bold, and we need to be clear about telling those stories, asking for what it is that we need, but none of that will happen if it's a guessing game, because what will happen is just more programs of the same and then more results of the same. And so I really think it's about sharing our experiences and talking about that and how that will meet their needs in order for them to come on board. And yes, it is very different at a mass participatory level as it is, you know, as opposed to, female Olympian. They're very different stories, but that's okay. We need to break it down, and we need to talk about each of those different groups and make sure they know what the story is and what some of the issues are.
One thing I have learned in this quest so far is men over the age of 45 have never lived in a gender equal world. So men over the age of 45 don't know it to be any different. And the majority of men in leadership roles are over the age of 45. So they do not see a problem. And it is our job as women to keep showing up and continue to have the conversation to show them that they might not even mean to be, in their state of mind that they're in. But I also actually have met with and talked to a lot of women over the age of 45 that are like, well, it just is what it is. And the idea that there could be a glimmer of hope is like a whole new conversation. So I don't knock the men, I just say they need us to help educate them because they don't know any differently.
And can I just touch on that piece just
Yeah.
lastly?
Yeah.
I agree, I think it's education. I also think that it's awareness from the men to recognize that when you can give opportunity to women, young women, or if it's, whether in development or giving them that position, provide those opportunities, because sometimes, I think it's aware that women they don't speak up. If they are not fully qualified for that position, they're not going to apply. If they don't check all of the boxes, they're not going to apply. A man, however, if he sees the same thing and he fills out maybe 3 of 5, will put their name forward. But for men to really recognize that there are females out there that can take on that role, but just to give them maybe a little bit more encouragement and provide those opportunities. I think that's really important too. So it's a combination of education and also awareness and things.
Thank you. So a question over here, and then we'll go to your question after. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. What's so disheartening for me is I struggled. I was told I was too small to row, and then I rowed at varsity level. And the head coach of the Canadian team said, your weight category is ridiculous. You're too small. You shouldn't row. And then I rowed anyway. But what's so disheartening is my nieces are now going through this at age 11 and 12, and I am so at a loss. They're being so influenced mass media, and my one niece doesn't want to run anymore because she doesn't think it's, you know, it's too masculine to do. So I understand everything that everybody is saying, but I'm really at a loss. Like I encounter men all the time, the same thing. You know, like there's this huge movement in terms of trying to educate men about emotional labor and equality and all of this stuff, but it's kind of like a yeah, that's nice, but you butt up against so much, and I find that even just speaking to men over the age of 45, it's lost, and I guess if you guys have any ideas or solutions, what you would suggest.
Keep showing up. It's the only answer. Keep showing up. To get ripped off the race course, keep showing up. And the only way 11-year-old girls will keep showing up is if they see a 12-year-old girl showing up. If they see a 20-year-old girl showing up. And I mean, I'll be honest, I think it's ridiculous that we're in the binary conversation because there's a whole non-binary conversation coming. And if we can't be in the binary with big hearts that have a lot of stamina and a ton of enthusiasm for it, we won't know what's coming in 2020. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think, I mean, the other point is there are safe places and positive environments, so it's seeking those out. It's not normal, it's not everywhere, and access is already an issue to any program, but I would encourage you to keep looking because they do exist. Time for last question before we wrap up.
You've already answered it partly. I'm involved in the ringette environment, which is female sport, and what our problem is that trying to get the women to come back in as coaches. And that's so hard because they've got, the dads are coaching, and then we try to pair them up with a woman, but they just sort of quietly, even though they're the ones with the technique, they're the ones with the skills, they're the ones that know how to play the sport. But the guy is just more confident. And just this year, and this is our success story, is we started getting U16 girls to help coach younger levels, and it's making such a difference. Like, we went to our AGM and we had dinner, and these girls were flocked by the younger kids. They were hanging on them as they went around the room, and it made such an important contribution, but it takes such a long time. And then they go off to university, and then you lose them for a while, and maybe they'll come back, but quite often they don't. And it's really hard to keep that momentum going.
It's definitely a huge issue that we see of like qualified coaches. Sometimes when they have been in situations before where seeing coaches apply for jobs and the women coach is completely qualified, has coached before, and then a male coach who hasn't coached before or have any coach education gets a job because they're a good athlete. But
exactly.
Yeah, so it's teaching them to have that confidence, and again, we keep going back to role models, and when girls see those role models in place, like I know for myself, my coach was a very, very strong female coach, and for so long, she just was like, okay, you're gonna be a coach, you should be a coach, and gave me those coach opportunities during the practice, and let me coach not only males, but also females since the time I was 15, so I've kind of gotten used to that, like that's how it should be, that females can coach, and giving them girls that confidence, because unfortunately, that is sometimes what happens in the job situation, that they need the confidence to get through.
Just to touch on that, I was that girl that was an athlete, and I loved to play. I would never like to speak up. If somebody was to speak up, I'd let everybody else talk, and I just kind of played my, do my role on the field. That was about it. And it wasn't until my final year at UBC, actually, when I was injured, so I had an extra year, so all my friends graduated, and I was the only one of my age there. And we had a new coach come in, who I'd worked with before, and so the conversation really was at that point, nobody else is going to do it, you have to do it. You have to be the leader, you have to show everybody else, what it takes to be on this team and whatnot. Because I'd been there for 4 years, this is my, my final hoorah. And in that year, when somebody challenged me to be a leader, I realized I was actually good at it. And I was actually able to step up to the plate, but nobody had asked me to be in that role before. I played on the national team before that. I played, with UBC. I played for Team BC. I played in so many different teams, but I'd never been asked to be a leader in any of those groups. And so finally, when I was asked to be in that role, it was actually insane how quickly I just fell into it. And I was being more of like a big sister role, like just making sure everybody was okay. And that sort of now filtered into my coaching experiences, is I'm just taking all of that experience from that final year, and I'm taking it into this role now as a coach. And whether it's with, at a university level or at the grassroots levels, I think just recognizing that you have the experiences and to have confidence in those experiences is something that coaches, or trying to develop young females into coaches, is very important, is to sort of have confidence in that experience of yours. Whether it's 2 years of playing, whether it was 5, whether you played at a high level, whether you just really enjoyed participating. Just having the confidence in knowing that you belong.
Yeah, that sense of belonging, which we're striving for. So thank you to all of you for joining us in this conversation. We talked about the power of having to shift the structure that holds sport and physical activity in place. Ideas around alignment, collaboration, access, they're all critical. We need to be aligned with ourselves. And then also the power of all of us in this room. You've heard it over and over, giving opportunity, having a conversation, continuing the conversation, continuing to show up. We all have that agency and power, and I would like to challenge you to think about how you can use that on this topic. So thank you for joining us. Would love to stay connected. You can find me at viaSport, Jennifer H. at viaSport.ca, or any of us there, and would love to continue the conversation. So thank you.